Conservative New Media viewers, JLin fans around the world, Charlotte Hornets fans around the world, what's up? It's me, PFV, Paul F. Villarreal, the NBA expert. We're here to go over today the Charlotte Hornets roster and kind of lineup outlook for the season. This is the first video I've done in, I don't know, maybe like a month or two in terms of basketball, and we're getting ready for the start of training camp, which should begin at the end of next week, which is basically around September 26th or so. And I know a lot of you have been waiting for this, so I just wanted to start out. Instead of doing one video about everything, I might break it down a little bit more. Like, for example, this is more about the roster, although we're going to talk about a number of different things in this video, including style of play and so on and so forth. Now, for those of you who are probably Charlotte Hornets fans who have never seen any of these videos before from us here at Conservative New Media, let me tell you how this works. We're going to cover the Charlotte Hornets this season here on Conservative New Media, and we're going to do so through the lens of JLin. Basically, we observe and are fans of JLin, and so we cover the team that he's on, but we cover the entire team, but we tilt more towards Jeremy and kind of how the team and things are working in terms of his perspective and the perspective of his fans. But we will discuss the entire team and how the team's performing and what they can do better, what they're doing well, so on and so forth. Now, for the JLin fans, let me just tell you, I know I have not been on Twitter much recently. In the last 3 weeks or so, I've just been really busy. Plus, I just have to cut back a little bit on Twitter because I have to get ready to start doing the videos again. And I may soon be spending a little bit more time on Facebook, actually, as John and I are starting to get into a bit more of our political coverage and so on and so forth, too, as the 2016 presidential campaign is starting to rev up. Obviously, that has not been an issue for the entire time in which we've been covering Jeremy, because we started covering Jeremy in 2012. So there was a campaign obviously going on at that time. We didn't cover it as much, but we're starting to pick up some of the coverage that we do. So just to let you guys know, I'm still here. I have not been able to be on Twitter as much. I don't know how much, if I'll be able to be on it as much as I have been in the past, but I'll still be there. I mean, I'll still be around and everything. But I did want to get back kind of on the treadmill, so to speak, of doing these videos. So I took some time for this today. Now, let's move forward here. And before I start to discuss the Hornets roster and lineups specifically, I want to go over more generally kind of where the NBA is heading right now in terms of what type of roster construction and systems teams are looking to have. And this is important because this is going to apply to what I think the Hornets are trying to do and where they're trying to take their roster. But let's just go over this really quickly. Some of you who are more familiar with the NBA, who watch the NBA regularly, you're already going to know some of this stuff. But there's a lot of people who are newer to basketball, who are JLin fans, or who just more so watch Jeremy's games, and they might not know this as well. So we want to make sure everybody is up to speed. Okay, as you see there on the slide in front of you, pace and space system. What does that mean? Pace means, of course, playing. In this context, it means playing at a fast tempo, up and down the court quickly, shooting and scoring quickly. This will result in more points in the game, more shot attempts, more scoring attempts in transition. So you're trying to really get the You're trying to get up and down the court and get the ball up and in the air fast, trying to score. This, of course, will remind you of Mike D'Antoni, the 7 seconds or less system that was used in Phoenix. 7 seconds or less, that relates to getting the ball up at the basket within 7 seconds of the shot clock starting. So in other words, the shot clock's 24 seconds. You want the ball up at the basket within 17 seconds left on the shot clock. That's what that means. Another example of this, along with Mike D'Antoni and his principles and his system, is the Warriors, who just won the championship. If you listen to Steve Kerr or all of a sudden I cannot remember the name of the coach who just went to the New Orleans Hornets, who was the offensive coordinator, so to speak, or the offensive coordinator for the Warriors. I can't remember his name right now. Alvin Gentry. Both of those two said that Mike D'Antoni, his system, was vindicated by the Warriors championship. And they both said he deserved a lot of credit. Now, Mike D'Antoni is not the only person who did this, but he's one of the major forces behind this. And this is the direction in which the current NBA is heading towards. And so other teams want to imitate this because it's successful, because they don't want to be behind the curve, they want to be on the curve or try to get ahead of the curve. This is where things are going. The Warriors have the blueprint kind of what to do. And if you remember the 2015 finals, the way in which the Warriors won the finals after losing, they won the first game, lost the next 2 games, something like that. Then they won 3 games in a row. They won 3 games in a row because they went small. In other words, they took Andrew Bogut out of the lineup and they inserted in his place, I believe, Draymond Green, who was basically 6'7" playing center. And the Cavaliers couldn't deal with it. The Warriors were spreading them out. As I mentioned here, you spread out the defense and you create driving lanes and you have interchangeable parts, meaning the different players on the floor can all do similar skills. You want guys that can shoot, you want guys that can dribble, you want guys that can pass. I believe Draymond Green, who was playing center for the final 3 games of the series, had 1 game where he had a triple-double, meaning he had at least 10 assists. That's what we're looking for. Spreading out the defense. How do you spread the defense out? You spread out the defense when everybody on the court can shoot. And so what happens with that is if you're playing a center and the center can only shoot from about 5 feet in, you're not spreading out the defense because his defender can stick around the rim. And not only does he get to guard that center on offense, if one of the other players tries to come and drive to the rim, then that defending center can guard him as well. So if you get centers or big men who can shoot further away, then that defensive center has to come out further to guard him. He goes away from the rim. And that means that the rim is open for your other players. And that's what spreading out the defense is. The more that every player on the court can shoot from distance, the more spread out the defense becomes, and the more driving lanes there are to get to the rim, and the more unprotected the rim becomes. These are really important principles in terms of how the NBA is played at this point in time. So you hear this all the time. You hear it like with the Cavaliers and LeBron James. LeBron wants to play with guys who can shoot when he's on the court. Why? Because they draw the defense out, and then LeBron has more space to be able to get to the basket, and nobody's there at the rim to guard him when he gets there. The interchangeable parts, that's important because Well, there's a couple reasons why, but it's important. First of all, it's important because that's how you're going to construct your roster. You want to get as many guys that have a variety of skills as you can get. That's number one. That's important of what we're going to talk about with Charlotte's roster. Number two, one of the key things in the NBA is being able to switch on defense against the pick and roll. And so the reason why this is important is a lot of offenses will work to exploit the defense based upon the pick and roll. What I mean is maybe they'll run a pick and roll with a guard and the center, called a 1-5 pick and roll. And what happens is when the play is defensed, if the defense has to switch, then you have a center guarding a guard. Usually the center is not going to be able to defend a guard. And so at that point in time, the guard has the advantage. The offense has the advantage. However, if you have defenders who are capable, who are athletic enough to be able to guard perimeter players, then you, as a defense, win. And usually those types of guys are maybe a little bit shorter. As I said, they're athletic. Somebody like a Draymond Green, somebody like, for the Cavaliers, Tristan Thompson. That's important. That's really important. And so you want as many guys with all these variety of skills, particularly on offense, but also guarding the pick and rolls on defense. That's how you're going to try to construct your roster in the modern NBA for these things. This is what succeeds in the NBA and what is going to succeed going forward in the NBA. Another example of this is when you hear announcers or analysts talking about players such as a stretch 4 or a stretch 5. What the stretch refers to is somebody who can stretch the defense, and that means somebody who can shoot. So a stretch 4 just corresponds with the power forward position in NBA. A stretch power forward is a power forward who can shoot perimeter shots. A stretch 5 is a center who can shoot perimeter shots. And again, that's going to be important as we talk here in a second about the Hornets roster. But this is kind of the baseline information and the background. And I just want to give this to people who they're not following this as much as I am or as much as some other super fans are and around this stuff day in and day out. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section below the video player, or come and ask us on Twitter. You'll find that link in the video description below the video player as well. Now, with that background information, let's talk about Charlotte's roster, okay? This is, you're looking at right now, this is the training camp roster. All 18 men that are currently signed, and I included the new signees, Sam Thompson and Jason Washburn, okay? And 4 of them I have below, and then 14 of them are up in the main section. This is what I believe today, September 18th, 2015. This is what I think is a good chance of what the depth chart is going to look like. The depth chart just means who plays with which unit. First unit, second unit, third unit, and who's going to make the team. I think there's a good chance that Sam Thompson and Jason Washburn aren't going to make the team, or maybe they go down to the D League. Although I will say this, there's a chance one or both of them could make the team, and it just depends on the rest of the roster, and I'll explain that as I go through that. First of all, let's just go through the units here. Now, before I get started, the asterisk refers to players who are coming back to the Hornets. These are players that were on the team last year and they are returning. And I will use that asterisk for those type of players throughout this video, just so you know what that is. The pound sign, the number sign, that refers to players who are rookies. Although I should have put one there for Sam Thompson, and I did not do that, the small forward on the bottom. Maybe I'll add that later. Now, finally, the plus sign beside Daniels, that's Troy Daniels. They're in the third unit and the shooting guard position. The reason why I used a plus sign for him is he is a returning player, but he only played a very small portion of the season with the Hornets last year. He came over in a trade later in the season, so he didn't have a full season with the team. So he's not brand new, but he's still relatively new. Okay. Point guard, Kemba Walker, clearly, obviously, Kemba's the starter. Kemba's a returning player. They just signed him to an extension for about $12 million a year for 4 years, I believe. They're invested in Kemba, and so that's where he's at. I know there's a number of Lin fans who feel that Lin might supplant Kemba Walker. Let's not talk about that right now. I'm just gonna treat this the way that it is. And Kemba, as we're going into the season, Kemba's a starter. And he deserves to be. They're invested in him. He's performed well for them, and that's that. Nicholas Batum, new player coming from the Portland Trailblazers. Shooting guard. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, small forward. He's a returning player. Cody Zeller is power forward. He's a returning player. Al Jefferson, center. He's a returning player. Now, going into the second unit, the second names across the list, we'll read them down. JLin, Jeremy Lamb, Marvin Williams, who's returning to the team, Frank Kaminsky, the highly touted rookie, and Spencer Hawes. Now, what you see in that second unit, and I'll have a slide later about the second unit, is they're almost all new players. The only player coming back that I think will be on the second unit is Marvin Williams. So you have the first unit, 4 guys are coming back. So they already have cohesiveness. They have chemistry, except for Nicholas Batum, who, because of the way Nick plays, he should fit in well. He's a good complementary piece. But the second unit, they never played on this team, and they never played with one another, really. And so that's something to look at, and I'll talk more about that later. Third unit, Aaron Harrison, the rookie who performed well in Summer League. Troy Daniels, mentioned previously. P.J. Hairston and Tyler Hansbrough. I couldn't fit the GH of his name in there, but that's who it is. And the center, I have a blank. The reason why that's blank currently is because looking down below that and the others, the first other is Brian Roberts, the point guard. Brian Roberts, there's a chance that the Hornets will carry 4 point guards, or they could even carry more if they wanted to. And so if you carry 4 at one position, that means you're only going to carry 2 at another position. Right now, that position that might get slighted in the third player is the center position. So that's why I have that the way it is. Elliot Williams, Sam Thompson, Jason Washburn. Now, let's talk about who might and who might not make this roster. The reason why I said before that I think Sam Thompson and Jason Washburn do have a chance to make the roster. Sam Thompson, I say, because P.J. Hairston, in my understanding, has had some off-the-court issues that may have the team looking at him in terms of, is he going to stick around or not? I don't know that. I don't have any info on that. I'm not completely versed on that. But just from casually looking at the situation, it's possible that I don't think they're going to give up on him this quickly because he's only played 1 year in the league, but he needs to get it together a little bit in terms of his approach, from what I can tell. And if he doesn't get it together, then perhaps that would open up a spot or situation for Sam Thompson. Jason Washburn, the reason why Jason Washburn might make the roster is because, as you see, there's a void in that third center spot. So if the Hornets decide they want a third center on the team and they don't feel that Tyler Hansbrough is what they want as a third center, then perhaps there's a chance for Jason Washburn to make the squad. My guess is that Thompson, Washburn, maybe Elliott Williams, those guys could end up either they just come for training camp or they end up on the D-League team, which I believe is the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. I think that's true, although I've got to double-check that. Fort Wayne, Indiana. Sometimes teams will bring in guys and they'll sign them to contracts so that they can kind of have their dibs on them for the D-League, so they can have them and put them on their team in the D-League. I don't know exactly what's being thought here. I haven't read stuff in the last couple of weeks on it, so I don't know, but that's just my thinking on it. Elliott Williams, the point guard. Elliott Williams was signed by the Hornets, I believe, to a 10-day contract last year. So they've already gotten a look at him. They kind of have some bit of a feel for him, and my guess with him would be they might want him in the D-League. They might want to try to develop him a little bit down on the D-League, and so they're bringing him in. Excuse me. I will say that I know that JLin fans have been a bit concerned with how many point guards the team is carrying. In other words, why does a team have 5 point guards, including Aaron Harrison as a point guard? And some of that concern is along the lines of, well, is what happened last year with the Lakers going to happen to JLin again this year? Meaning Jordan Clarkson kind of came out of nowhere and took playing time and took some accolades or so on away from JLin. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I don't think Elliott Williams is ready to do that. I don't think Brian Roberts is ready to do that. Aaron Harrison he's a guy that played shooting guard in college. So he's transitioning right now from shooting guard to point guard. I don't think Aaron Harrison has the type of athleticism and kind of high energy play that Jordan Clarkson does and did last year. Jordan Clarkson is very athletic. He played point guard in college. He was ready for a breakout. Also, the Lakers were tanking. So that gave more of an opportunity for Jordan Clarkson to come in and get a look. The Hornets are not tanking this year. And I don't think that those 3 players I mentioned, Harrison, Roberts, and Williams, I don't think they have the innate ability or physical talent that Jordan Clarkson does. So what I'm telling you is, if you're a JLin fan, I wouldn't worry about that. If you had to worry about anybody in terms of a guard, maybe you worry about Aaron Harrison. Apparently, he was doing a really good job in pick and rolls in the summer league for the Hornets. So there's that, but he is transitioning from shooting guard to point guard. And personally, I'm not worried about that at all. I'm really not real concerned about that. My guess is that Aaron Harrison this is going to be a growing year for him. Unless somebody gets hurt in front of him, Walker and Lin, I don't think he's going to get a tremendous amount of playing time. And this is going to be more of a development type of a season for him. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of a look-see right there. Brian Roberts, the team doesn't seem real high on him based upon how he was used last year and kind of the way that things developed over the season. I don't think they're real high on him. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't stick around. I don't know anything about that, but that wouldn't surprise me if that ended up happening, if he was not with the team when the regular season began. Elliott Williams, as I mentioned earlier, 10-day contract last year, and bringing him in again this year. Probably just take a look at him, see where he's at, so on and so forth. Okay, let's move on. If you listen to Steve Clifford talk this offseason, one of the things that he mentioned when I believe he was met with the media for JLin's press conference was he seems inclined to want to use a 9-man rotation rather than a 10-man rotation. And he says that he feels like, when you do the 9-man rotation, guys have a little more time on the court, and they can it's just better for those players' continuity. They feel a little bit better. They get a little more playing time. They just can kind of get their rhythm a little bit more. So if that's the case, then who are likely to be the 9 men in the rotation? And that's what this is just speculative on my part. Haven't heard anything, or I have no inside information. But let's take a look at this. Obviously, the starting 5, Walker, Batum, MKG, Zeller, and Jefferson, they're going to be in the 9-man rotation. Marvin Williams, who, again, he's a returning player. He's performed pretty well for the Hornets. He's going to be in the 9-man rotation. I'm fairly confident. JLin is going to be in the 9-man rotation. I'm very confident of that. Frank Kaminsky, in my opinion, will also be in the 9-man rotation. The only way I think Kaminsky is not in the 9-man rotation is if he doesn't seem ready for the NBA. In other words, if he comes in and he starts to struggle and things aren't going well for him, he's having adjustment difficulties, then maybe he comes out of the 9-man rotation. My guess is Frank's going to struggle some just because all rookies do. I think Charlotte wants him to succeed quickly. They want to use him in the 9-man rotation. I'm sure of that. And I think they're going to give him a lot of opportunities to work through issues. So I think there's a very good chance Frank will start the season in the rotation, and they're going to try to keep him in the rotation and just kind of work through whatever kinks and issues he might have as he develops. So that leaves 2 other players who might not be in the rotation: Jeremy Lamb and Spencer Hawes. Now, I have Spencer Hawes bolded and Jeremy Lamb not bolded. The reason why is my guess on who's not going to be part of the 9-man rotation is Spencer Hawes. That's my first guess of the guy who's not going to make the 9-man rotation. My second guess would be Jeremy Lamb. Jeremy Lamb he's raw. He's a talented player. He's a very good shooter. He has an excellent shooting technique. He's athletic. He's a good rebounder for his position, very good rebounder. But he's still kind of figuring it all out. So there's a chance that Lamb might not be in the rotation, but my guess is it's going to be Spencer Hawes. And the reason why I say that is Hawes, he's not very athletic. He's not a good defender. The thing he is good at is shooting the ball. He's a very good perimeter shooter, and as we talked about with the pace and space slide, my guess of why the Hornets wanted him is because he can shoot the ball. And I'll talk more about that in a second, just in terms of what the Hornets and their roster. I should have talked about it before, but I'll go back to it here after we discuss this. That's what I think is going to happen here. I think they're going to try to play Frank Kaminsky at both power forward and center, get him a lot of minutes, though he's going to have to be careful of foul trouble. Rookies tend to pick up fouls very quickly and easily. But I think Hawes is going to be the odd man out here, unless Lamb performs poorly or unless Kaminsky performs poorly. That would be my guess. Now, because I forgot it before, let's go back to discussing the depth chart here. I mentioned about what the NBA is doing, what they're developing into, and where things are moving towards. What I see when I look at the Hornets roster, when I look at what they seem to be trying to do, what you see with their team, their last year, 2014-2015, they were very poor on offense. They were kind of slow. The pace was slow. They didn't score a lot of points. They were kind of the opposite of the pace and space formula. Okay? And what it looks like they're trying to do, the GM Rich Cho, looks like they're trying to remake the roster so that they can get away from that, so that they can develop and go towards the pace and space model. And so this summer right now, or the just concluded, this looks like summer number one of turning over the roster so that they can become a pace and space type of a team. And what did they do? They added skilled players and they added good shooters, including good shooting big men like Frank Kaminsky and like Spencer Hawes. So what I think is going to happen, I think that after this year, and this is just speculation, I think that after this year, there's a good chance that Cody Zeller might not be around and Al Jefferson might not be around. And I say that because there were reports this past summer that the Hornets were aggressively trying to move Cody Zeller. Okay? And secondly, Al Jefferson's contract is concluded at the end of the 2015-2016 season. I'm not saying the Hornets don't like Al. They do like him and respect him. He's a tremendous low-post player, an offensive scorer from the low post. But he's not a shooter. He's not a guy that's going to spread the defense. He kind of holds the ball, becomes a little bit of a ball stopper on offense, and that's the opposite of where the NBA is headed. Cody Zeller isn't a shooter. He's not a stretch power forward. So that's my guess. I think this was the first installment this summer of the Hornets remaking their roster. And so bringing in Kaminsky, bringing in Hawes makes a tremendous amount of sense. Kaminsky can play in the low post. He does have low post moves, but he's a perimeter shooter. He can shoot out to the three-point line. Spencer Hawes is almost solely a three-point shooter. Those are the guys that are going to fit in this type of a pace and space type of a system if Charlotte is trying to transition to that. And I do think that is what they're trying to transition into. But what that means for this year, while the Hornets are in transition, if they are in transition to move towards that type of a roster, what it means is you're going to have different lineups playing different ways. The first team is probably going to play a little slower, dump the ball into Jefferson. There's not going to be as much space, and I'll talk about that in a bit, because of Cody Zeller not being able to shoot the ball from distance and because of Al Jefferson not being able to shoot the ball from distance. And so when those guys are in the game, you're going to play slower. When they're not in the game, then you might be able to play a little bit faster, and you're going to be able to play a little bit more spread out. Al Jefferson, when he was hurt in the 2014-2015 season, the team performed pretty well without him. They were quicker. I think they scored more points. And so the Hornets got an idea of what they might be able to do if they don't have to kind of play through Al Jefferson and play slow ball. And so I do think that's where they're heading. I think that's where they want to go in the future. Let me also say this, and as regards the roster and just some other points. Kemba Walker had lateral meniscus surgery in January of 2015. For JLin fans, you're very familiar with that because Jeremy had the same surgery. Players who have that surgery, they usually are not at the same level for, I would say, probably at least a year. And I know that Kemba, when he came back from the surgery in March, his level dipped. So there's still a chance, now that we're 9-10 months out, there's still a chance that Kemba's not going to be the same Kemba Walker for a while. And obviously, if that's the case, that's probably going to give Jeremy even more opportunity. Nothing against Kemba. I'm not trying to put Kemba down or anything like that, but just that's how that injury works. It takes time to kind of get your groove back from that. And if that's the case, then that's going to give Jeremy probably even more opportunities. Something else I want to say about this roster. There's been a lot of discussion in the Charlotte media about Nicholas Batum and and how they're going to run a lot of offense through him. Let me just say a couple of things about Nick. I like Nicholas Batum a lot. He seems like a good person. He's a very respected and good player. Number one, Nicholas Batum has not been – he's been in a slump for like the last year and a half. So one full season and then half of another season. So half of the 2013-14 season and then all of 2014-15. In that period of time, he simply hasn't been the same player. He's not been as good. Now, is that why Portland let him go? I don't know. Also, I think Nick's been dealing with some personal issues and marriage or whatever. And I'm not trying to gossip about him. I'm just saying, where's he at? Where's his focus at? And so on and so forth. Finally, with Nicholas, it's my understanding that Nicholas is not great at dribbling with his left hand, which, of course, was the knock that used to be there on JLin. So Nicholas can create plays. He is a good playmaker, but I don't know if he's going to be what he's being built up to be right now. I don't know if his game is there at the terms of the level that it was at previously at this point in time. And he does seem to have some limitations in terms of ball handling and going left and this type of a thing. And once again, if you're a JLin fan, that shapes up very well for Jeremy, because the more limitations that other playmakers on the team have, the more opportunity Jeremy's going to have. And again, I'm not saying this. I'm not trying to pit Jeremy against Nicholas or any of this stuff. I'm just trying to give you like an objective analysis of what I know about this, what I know about the players, what I know about the situation, and kind of what you might see and what to expect. So that's what I want to say about that. Now let's move on to the second unit of the Hornets, and how and why I think that this ends up shaping up well for Jeremy in terms of what he's going to be able to do here. As you see there in the slide in front of you, JLin, again, I'm no question, there's no doubt in my mind, Jeremy is in the 9-man rotation. Jeremy is going to be absolutely critical for this team. And I'll talk more about that in a second. Jeremy Lamb I think it's a good chance he's in there. If not, that's why I have the dash or the backslash and then the blank there in case if Jeremy's not in the rotation. Jeremy Lamb, Marvin Williams, again the only returning player in the second unit. Frank Kaminsky, Spencer Hawes, backslash blank because I do think there's a good chance Spencer will not be in the 9-man rotation. One of the reasons why Jeremy's going to be so important for this unit is, as I mentioned before, this unit's never played together. They've never played with one another. They never played on this team. That means they need a leader and they need a playmaker. Now, Jeremy Lamb is capable of making plays. He is. He's not at the level of Jeremy Lin as a playmaker. It's not even close. He's a good player, but he's more of a shooter than he is a playmaker and a distributor. So Jeremy's going to be critical. Jeremy Lin is going to be critical for several reasons. One, he's got to lead this unit. He's got to pull this unit together as a leader and as a playmaker. Number two, because this is an inexperienced unit in terms of chemistry, you got a rookie there. This unit is going to need scoring, and Jeremy is a scorer, and they're going to need his scoring as well as his playmaking. So this unit sets up perfectly for Jeremy. They need his leadership, they need his scoring, they need his playmaking, and because Frank Kaminsky and possibly Spencer Hawes are going to be on the court here, they're going to space out the court. And that means, as I said in the pace and space slide, there's going to be more room to drive for Jeremy Lin. So this is, even if you're a Jeremy Lin fan and you're concerned and he's not starting and all this, this lineup is going to be probably the best lineup he could be on this team. I mean, sure, you could have maybe MKG and Batum and more talent or skills than this lineup. But in terms of the spacing and what is needed for this second unit, this is perfect for Jeremy Lin. Perfect. And I expect him to thrive this season and in with this lineup. I expect him to thrive on this team. I think this is going to be a very good year for Jeremy Lin, provided that he's healthy. Hopefully he will be. So I'm extremely optimistic about how things are going to go for Jeremy Lin this year. In terms of the Hornets overall, the way to think of them is there's no overriding superstar on this team. But now that with the roster the team has, they're deep. They definitely can play 9 men or 10. They have talent, and they have balance. Again, because there's no superstar, it's kind of going to be a collective effort. They're going to play good defense. That's Steve Clifford's calling card. And I think they should. I mean, the East is getting better, but they've got a very good chance of making the playoffs, in my opinion. It's not going to be easy, but they definitely have a shot at it. And I think good things are on the horizon for them. And that's going to redound for Jeremy Lin as well. Okay, moving on. Now I want to talk about the lineup for the Hornets that's not going to have good spacing. This is kind of the dinosaur ball or ancient style that Charlotte's dealing with. And again, I do think they're trying to transition away from this with what they're doing with the roster. But for this year at least, they've got to deal with this. This is what it's going to be. Okay, so this is the starting lineup. Walker, Batum, MKG, Zeller, and Jefferson. MKG is not a perimeter shooter. If you've ever seen him, he has that really awkward, unique shooting motion. Now, I think he's working to change that, but he's a ways away from becoming anything like a proficient outside shooter. Cody Zeller, not a perimeter shooter. Al Jefferson, not a perimeter shooter. So what this means is when you have this type of a lineup, there's less room for driving. You're not playing with pace. Al Jefferson's a really big guy. He's not super mobile, although I believe he's trying to lose weight this offseason. Hopefully that'll help him out. But so this lineup is slower. There's not a lot of space for driving. There's not a lot of space on pick and rolls, so on and so forth. So if JLin was in this lineup, he might not do that great because it's not set up properly for somebody of Jeremy's skills to be able to do that well with it. So, like I said, it's Jeremy being in the second unit is probably just fine for him in terms of what his skills, what his skills set and how the team's makeup and what the skills of the team are going to be. Now, we've heard before, Steve Clifford has said that Jeremy's going to play with Kemba Walker. They will be on the court at the same time. And let me just say that the team is going to play small ball a fair amount. I'm pretty sure of that. Small ball goes with the pace and space. As I mentioned, Draymond Green playing center position for the Warriors. You play small ball because usually that means you have better perimeter shooting from smaller players, and you have quicker players on the court, and you have more spacing because of those things, because of the shooting ability. That's why teams go small. I do think Jeremy and Kemba will be on the court at a decent amount. Jeremy is capable of guarding shooting guards. He's got enough strength to be able to do that. He's not super long in terms of reach and this type of thing, but he's got the strength to be able to do it. And I've seen people talking about it. They don't think it's going to be that successful. I think it will be successful because it's not just Jeremy and Kemba on the court at the same time. It means you'll have at least two other skilled players on the court also, probably Nicholas Batum and MKG. So I think it can work, and I think it will work, and you will see that lineup. So that is about it. This is this is a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. What we did here is we talked about kind of an introduction to where the NBA is heading, what the Hornets roster is, why they seem to be overhauling the roster and where I think the roster is going. To be short about it, the Hornets brought back 8 players, which means that they have 7 new players at least. So they're overhauling their roster. And I think there's more overhauling to come. But they did what they could do in this first summer of overhauling it, and I think they did a very good job. We talked about what the depth chart, I think, is going to look like. We talked about what the second unit is probably going to look like, which unit for the Hornets has poor spacing, and why that is, kind of how that goes into why they might be overhauling the roster. And finally, we talked about the 9-man rotation, what I think it's going to be and why I think it's going to be that way. Also, we talked about Charlotte likely going to be playing small ball. In fact, I know they're going to be playing small ball, just a matter of how much they're going to be playing it. I didn't make a slide for that, but that's something that's definitely going to be happening, and I think it's going to be done with success. I think it will be done with success. So, if you're a Charlotte Hornets fan, I think it certainly should be better than last year, depending on injuries. If the team is relatively healthy, they are a better team than last year. They are a more skilled team, better perimeter shooting, better spacing, and so on. I think this is definitely going to be a better year for the Hornets. If you're a JLin fan, I think you should be very excited. This is setting up well for JLin. I think Steve Clifford, the head coach, understands him. Jeremy has comfort with Clifford. He has comfort with assistant coach Steven Silas. We know that Steve Clifford talks to Mike D'Antoni, so there's going to be input there. The lineup, the second unit, sets up well for JLin. I think that you're finally going to see more of the JLin that we saw in New York after these 3 difficult years for him. 2 years in Houston and the year in Los Angeles. Finally, Jeremy is improving his skill set. Jeremy works extremely hard. His perimeter shot is getting better. His overall skill set is getting better. For many people at Jeremy's age and years of experience in the league, Jeremy's going into his 6th year, and he's now 27 years old. Many players at that point in time, they're already a finished product. They're not going to improve anymore. They are what they are. JLin is still improving. I have said it before. I still think Jeremy's probably a year or 2 away from his best. And what his best is going to look like is when his perimeter shot is even better. And when he can play at different speeds even better, being able to play at a slower pace and being able to thrive in different systems. So I expect Jeremy to be the best version of him this year, and I think he's going to continue to get better in the time to come. Is Jeremy going to be on the Charlotte Hornets next year? I don't know. I have no idea. But I know that this year can be a good year for him if he is, again, hopefully healthy. I think that's about the only factor. I think that the team is going to use him well, and I think he's going to do well. I think things set up very good for him going into this situation. Okay, that is it. Hope you enjoyed this video. As I said, it's the first video I've made since JLin's press conference when he signed with the Hornets. Thanks for watching Conservative New Media. Once again, I am PFE Paul F. Villarreal, the NBA expert. Your comments below, thumbs up, thumbs down. Again, I'll be in the comments when I can. I'll be on Twitter when I can. I'm very excited for things to start next week. Jeremy is going to be doing a autograph signing at the Time Warner Cable Arena on, I believe, Tuesday, September 22nd. So that'll be happening. Then I believe the media day will take place on the Thursday, the 25th, I believe it is, or is it Friday the 25th? One of those. The 25th, I believe, is when the media day will occur. And then the next day is when training camp officially starts. And not all the NBA teams are starting on the 26th. The teams that are going to be playing overseas in the preseason, which the Hornets are, those are the teams that will start training camp on the 26th. That is it for now. Talk to you soon. Can't wait. We're only 1 week away now from JLin and the Charlotte Hornets beginning the 2015-2016 season.